The rain came down in sheets that October afternoon, turning downtown Atlanta into a blur of brake lights and honking horns. Emily Carter stood on the corner of Peachtree and Fifth, her phone clutched in her trembling hand, staring at a photograph that shattered every illusion she'd built over the past decade. The picture showed her husband, Marcus, wrapped around a woman Emily had never seen before, younger, confident, smiling like she'd already won something Emily didn't even know was a competition. The message that came with it was simple and cruel. He's mine now. Come to the Riverside Hotel if you don't believe me. Room 1804. Emily had driven through the storm in a daze, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. 10 years of marriage. 10 years of supporting Marcus while he built his real estate empire from nothing. 10 years of putting her own career as a financial analyst on hold because he'd convinced her that they were building something together. Now, she stood outside the hotel, rain soaking through her coat, watching Marcus emerge from the revolving doors. He wasn't alone. The woman from the photo walked beside him, all sharp cheekbones and designer clothes that screamed new money. She looked at Emily with something between pity and contempt. "Emily," Marcus said, his voice flat. "No surprise. No guilt. Just annoyance. We need to talk. How long?" Emily's voice came out steadier than she felt. The woman, she'd later learn her name was Victoria Chun, smiled. 7 months. I'm Victoria, by the way. Since we're being honest now. 7 months. Emily felt the ground shift beneath her feet. 7 months of lies. 7 months of late nights Marcus claimed were investor meetings. 7 months of distance she'd blamed on stress. I want a divorce, Marcus said, as if he were discussing a business transaction. We can handle this quietly. I'll be fair about the settlement. Fair. The word tasted like poison in Emily's mouth. She'd given up everything, her 6-figure job at Goldman Sachs, her apartment in Midtown, her independence, because Marcus had promised they were partners. Now he stood here with his mistress, offering to be fair. You don't get to decide what's fair, Emily said quietly. Victoria stepped closer, and Emily saw something dangerous flash in her eyes. He's already decided, sweetheart. This is just a formality. Why don't you make this easy on everyone? Easy? Emily's voice rose despite herself. You want me to make it easy for you to steal my husband? I didn't steal anything. Victoria's smile turned sharp. He came willingly. Maybe if you'd been more. Interesting. He wouldn't have needed someone else. The words hit like physical blows, striking every insecurity Marcus had carefully cultivated over the years. Emily felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She turned to walk away, needing space, needing air, needing anything but this sidewalk and these two people who destroyed her life. That's when Victoria moved. The push wasn't a shove or an accidental bump. It was deliberate. 2 hands planted firmly between Emily's shoulder blades, propelling her forward off the rain-slicked curb, directly into the path of oncoming traffic. Time fractured into fragments. The scream of tires on wet pavement. The blinding glare of headlights. The sickening crunch of metal against bone. Emily's body flew across the hood of a delivery truck, her skull cracking against the windshield before she tumbled onto the asphalt like a discarded doll. Pain exploded through her left side, her arm, her ribs, her hip. The world spun in nauseating circles. Rain mixed with blood, running into her eyes, turning everything red. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Victoria's voice, high and panicked. Oh my God. She just stepped back. It was an accident. Accident. The word echoed in Emily's fading consciousness. Those hands had been deliberate, forceful, murderous. Emily tried to move, but her body wouldn't respond. She lay there, rain pouring down, tasting copper and fear, while voices shouted around her. Someone was calling for an ambulance. Someone else was crying. And then she heard Marcus, his voice close to her ear as he knelt beside her. But he wasn't speaking to her. He was speaking to Victoria, his words low and urgent. Calm down. Let them think it was an accident. Just stick to the story. Stick to the story. Emily's vision dimmed at the edges, darkness creeping in. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness claimed her was Victoria's whispered response. This actually works out perfectly. Now we don't need to wait for a divorce. 6 hours earlier, Emily had been in her home office, reviewing financial statements for the charity foundation she'd started after leaving Goldman Sachs. It wasn't the high-stakes trading floor she'd left behind, but it was meaningful work, helping women, entrepreneurs secure funding for their startups. Her phone had buzzed with that photograph. And everything had changed. She'd recognized the hotel immediately, the Riverside, where Marcus often met with investors. She'd even been there with him once or twice, back when he still pretended to want her involved in his business. Looking back now from her hospital bed, Emily could see the pattern she'd missed. The way Marcus had gradually convinced her to step away from her career. First, it was working from home instead of commuting to the Goldman office. Then it was consulting part-time instead of full-time. Then it was the foundation instead of consulting. Each step had felt like her choice. Each decision had been wrapped in concern for her well-being. You're exhausted, Em. You need better work-life balance. Don't you want to start a family soon? How can you do that with 80-hour weeks? She'd believed him. She'd believed they were building a life together. But Marcus had been building something else entirely, a cage. And once she was safely inside it, dependent on his money and isolated from her former colleagues, he'd started planning his exit. The hospital room came back into focus slowly. The beeping monitors. Antiseptic smell. Pain radiating through her entire left side. Emily opened her eyes carefully, testing her surroundings. Her left arm was in a cast. Her ribs screamed with each breath. Her head throbbed with a concussion that made the fluorescent lights feel like knives. But she was a live dot, and that meant Victoria. And Marcus had made a fatal mistake. Emily kept her eyes closed when she heard the hospital room door open. Footsteps approached her bed. 2 sets. She recognized Marcus's gait immediately. That confident stride that had once made her heart race. She's been unconscious for almost 24 hours, Marcus said, his voice carrying none of the worry a husband should feel. The doctor said there's no brain damage, but they want to keep her sedated for observation. And after that, Victoria's voice, cold, calculating. After that, we proceed carefully. I visit. I play the concerned husband. I make sure everyone sees how devastated I am. Then, when she's recovered enough, we move forward with the divorce quietly. She'd be too traumatized to fight. You think she knows? Victoria asked. That it wasn't an accident? She was flying into traffic, Victoria. She doesn't know anything. And even if she suspects, we stick to the story. You panicked when she turned suddenly, reached out instinctively, accidentally pushed her. Emily forced herself to keep her breathing steady, even as rage burned through her chest. They thought she was unconscious. They thought she could hear them planning her life like she was just another business deal to close. What about the settlement? Victoria pressed. I've already had my lawyer's draft papers. She get the house in Buckhead and enough money to live comfortably, but nothing substantial. Most of my assets are already protected in LLC structures she doesn't understand. She used to be a financial analyst, but that was 10 years ago. She doesn't have the spine for a real fight anymore. The contempt in his voice cut deeper than the physical injuries. We should go, Victoria said, before the nurse comes back. Remember, you're the devoted husband. Their footsteps receded. The door clicked shut. Only then did Emily open her eyes. The private room was expensively furnished. Of course, Marcus would insist on the best hospital accommodations for appearances. Through the window, she could see Atlanta's skyline against a gray afternoon sky. She wasn't dead. They'd tried, or at least allowed it to happen, and she wasn't dead. And now she knew the truth. Emily's mind raced despite the pain medication dulling her senses. Marcus thought she was broken. He'd spent 10 years slowly convincing her to give up her career, her independence, her confidence. But he'd forgotten something crucial. Before she'd met him, Emily Carter had been one of Goldman Sachs's top analysts. She'd specialized in corporate restructuring and hostile takeover defense. She'd never lost a case in 3 years. She knew how to find hidden assets, trace money through complex structures, and build airtight legal strategies. She'd just been asleep for a decade. Now it was time to wake up. The door opened again, and Emily quickly closed her eyes. But the voice that spoke was familiar in a completely different way. "Girl, I know you're awake." Emily's eyes snapped open. Standing in the doorway was her college roommate and former colleague from Goldman Sachs, Jasmine Roberts. Looking exactly as she remembered, sharp suit, sharper expression, and the fierce loyalty of someone who'd never forgotten their friends. "Jazz." Emily's voice came out rough, her throat dry. "Don't try to talk yet." Jasmine moved to the bedside, her eyes scanning Emily's injuries with barely controlled anger. "I heard about the accident through the industry grapevine. Came as soon as I could. But Emily, something doesn't feel right about this." "It wasn't an accident," Emily whispered. Jasmine went very still. "What?" Emily told Jasmine everything. The photograph, the confrontation, Victoria's hands on her back, the conversation she'd overheard just minutes ago. With each word, Jasmine's expression grew harder, more dangerous. "His mistress pushed you into traffic," Jasmine said flatly when Emily finished. "And Marcus was in on it." "I need your help," Emily said. "I need to find something I remember about Marcus's business structure. Something from when we first started dating, before I knew better." Jasmine pulled out her phone. "What am I looking for?" "When Marcus started his real estate company 12 years ago, I helped him structure it. I was still at Goldman then, and he couldn't afford proper legal counsel. I did it for free because I loved him, but I protected myself with an ownership clause. If we married, certain equity shares would vest to me automatically. I think he's forgotten about it." Understanding dawned on Jasmine's face. "How much?" 25% of Carter Properties. He bought out some early shares, but the marriage clause was ironclad. I drafted it myself." Jasmine's fingers flew across her phone screen. "His company is valued at what now? 2.8 billion? Something like that. Emily, you're not just a millionaire. You're a billionaire. And you own a quarter of the company he thinks he's hiding from you in the divorce. He thinks I'm too weak to fight back, too traumatized, too dependent." Emily's voice strengthened despite the pain. "He doesn't remember who I was before he convinced me to forget. What do you need me to do? First, don't let anyone know I'm fully conscious. Second, get me those incorporation documents and have them verified. Third, find me the best divorce attorney in Atlanta. I want someone ruthless." Jasmine smiled grimly. "I know exactly who to call. Catherine Park. They call her the executioner. She destroys wealthy spouses who try to hide assets. But Emily, you need to actually rest. Your body is seriously damaged. Broken arm, cracked ribs, severe concussion. They think I'm broken up here too." Emily tapped her temple carefully. "That's where they're wrong. I've just been sleeping. Now I'm wide awake." Over the next 4 days, Emily played her role perfectly. When nurses checked on her, she seemed groggy and confused. When doctors asked questions, she answered slowly, as if struggling to remember. When Marcus visited with flowers and false concern, she watched him through half-closed eyes and said nothing, but privately, with Jasmine's help. She worked. The incorporation documents were exactly where Emily remembered, stored in Goldman's secured client files from when she provided pro bono legal advice. The ownership clause was valid and binding. Marcus had signed it himself, probably thinking it would never matter because their marriage would last forever. But Jasmine discovered something even more interesting. Victoria wasn't just Marcus's mistress. She was also an employee at Carter Properties, a junior property manager he'd promoted rapidly over the past 7 months, giving her access to confidential deals, private meetings, and resources far beyond her experience level that had looked exactly like what it was. A man positioning his mistress while positioning his wife for disposal. And the financial records showed Marcus had been moving money into offshore accounts for over a year. Not illegal necessarily, but suspicious and sloppy. He'd left trails that a first-year analyst could follow. He'd gotten arrogant, comfortable. He thought Emily was no threat at all. On the 5th day, Catherine Park came to visit. She was 50-ish, silver-haired, and had a reputation for obliterating wealthy spouses in divorce court. She sat beside Emily's bed and listened to everything. When Emily finished, Catherine smiled. "Mrs. Carter, I'd be honored to represent you." Emily disappeared from the hospital on the 7th day. Jasmine arranged for a discharge during the chaotic morning shift change when no one would notice one patient leaving early. An unmarked car took Emily to a private recovery facility outside the city, a converted estate that specialized in discreet recuperation for high-profile clients. Marcus would discover her gone within hours. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him question whether she knew the truth. In her new room, surrounded by medical equipment and legal documents, Emily began the real work. She reviewed every paper Catherine's team had prepared. She practiced testimony for the depositions that would come. She forced her injured body through physical therapy, knowing she'd need her strength for the battles ahead. And she remembered, 12 years ago, Emily had been sitting in a coffee shop near Goldman's headquarters, reviewing merger documents for a case that would make or break her career. She was 28, newly promoted to senior analyst, and hungry to prove herself. Marcus had walked in, ordered coffee, and sat down across from her with his laptop. For 20 minutes, they'd worked in comfortable silence. Then he'd cursed softly at some paperwork that made no sense to him. She'd offered to help. That offer had changed everything. He'd been charming back then. Brilliant ideas, boundless energy, and absolutely no money for proper legal representation. She'd helped him anyway, attracted to his vision and passion. They'd started dating 3 months later. Looking back now, Emily could see how deliberately he'd played her. The romantic gestures that always came when she was about to close a major deal. The suggestions that she was working too hard. The subtle implications that her career was damaging their relationship. "You're exhausted, Em. When did you last take a vacation? You spend more time at Goldman than with me. Don't you want kids someday? How will you manage that with those hours?" She'd cut back her hours first, then turned down a promotion. Then finally, 3 years into their marriage, she'd quit entirely. Just temporarily, Marcus had said. Until the company stabilizes. "I need you as my partner in this, not distracted by other people's business." She'd believed him. She'd believed in their partnership. But that partnership had been a lie from the beginning. Catherine visited again with her full legal team. They spread documents across Emily's recovery room like battle plans. "The evidence is overwhelming," Catherine said. "The incorporation documents prove your ownership stake. The financial records show systematic asset hiding. We have witness statements from the street about Victoria's deliberate push. And we have something else." She pulled up an email chain on her laptop. We subpoenaed Victoria's company email account. Look at this exchange from 3 weeks before the incident. Emily read the messages, her hands trembling. Victoria to Marcus. She's going to be a problem with the Arlington deal. We need to handle this. Marcus to Victoria. What do you suggest? Victoria. Make it impossible for her to fight. If she's dealing with trauma, she won't have the energy to contest anything. Marcus. How severe are we talking? Victoria. Severe enough that she can't function for months. But nothing that raises questions. This is premeditation, Emily whispered. Conspiracy to commit assault. Yes, Catherine said with satisfaction. And it's enough to destroy them both. Criminally and civilly. Emily looked up at her lawyer, at Jasmine standing supportively nearby, at the documents proving Marcus had tried to erase her from his life. File everything, she said. Tomorrow morning, before he knows what's happening. The filing hit Marcus's office at 9:30 on a Thursday morning like a financial bomb. Jasmine had someone watching Carter Properties headquarters, sending updates every few minutes. He just got the papers, Jasmine reported, reading from her phone. He's gone white. Now he's making frantic calls. 3 different law firms in 10 minutes. Emily sat in her recovery room, reviewing quarterly reports for the charity foundation she'd neglected during her hospital stay. She felt calmer than she had in years, clearer, more herself. What about Victoria? She asked. She's being summoned to Marcus's office. She'd be there any minute. The filing had been comprehensive. Divorce proceedings citing adultery and conspiracy to commit assault. Activation of Emily's ownership shares effectively making her co-owner of Carter Properties. A motion to freeze all accounts pending investigation of hidden assets. And referral to the district attorney's office regarding the assault with all evidence attached. Catherine had called it the nuclear option. Emily called it justice. Her phone rang. Marcus's number. She let it go to voicemail. He called again. And again. 5 times in 10 minutes. Finally, he left a message. Emily, I don't know what's going on or who's advising you, but this is insane. These accusations are completely false. Please, we need to talk. She deleted it without responding. An hour later, an unknown number called. Emily answered. You're making a huge mistake. Victoria's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. Marcus will fight this. We both will. Good luck with that, Emily said calmly. I have your emails. All of them, including the ones where you two planned to hurt me. Silence. Then, those messages were taken out of context. You can't prove anything. The district attorney seems to think otherwise. You should probably get yourself a good criminal attorney. You're going to need one. Emily hung up. Over the next 3 days, Marcus's empire began to crack. His board of directors called an emergency meeting. Investors started asking difficult questions. Several major clients put contracts on hold, pending the outcome of the investigation. The media caught wind of the story. Atlanta real estate mogul faces fraud and assault allegations. Read the headline in the city's major business publication. The article was carefully worded to avoid libel, but it laid out the basic facts clearly enough. Marcus tried everything. He called, texted, had mutual acquaintances reach out, even showed up at their Buckhead mansion, hoping to find her. But Emily was still at the recovery facility, hidden where he couldn't reach her. You need to see this, Jasmine said, bringing her laptop to where Emily sat doing physical therapy. She pulled up a statement from one of Marcus's business partners. After careful consideration, I'm severing my relationship with Carter Properties. Recent allegations reveal a pattern of behavior incompatible with my values. They're running, Emily observed, like rats from a sinking ship. 3 more partners issued similar statements. His company stock is down 22%. Emily felt a complicated mix of emotions. Part of her was satisfied to see Marcus's world crumbling. But another part remembered the company they built together back when she still believed in their partnership. "Any response from him?" she asked. He issued a statement denying everything. Claims you're emotionally unstable from the accident and being manipulated by aggressive lawyers. Emily almost laughed. Even now, Marcus was trying to paint her as the incompetent victim who didn't understand her own life. "It's not working," Jasmine continued. His CFO just resigned with a statement saying he can no longer support the company's financial practices. That was significant. A CFO publicly distancing himself meant serious problems that other business people would recognize immediately. What about Victoria? She lawyered up. Some expensive criminal defense attorney from Chicago. But here's the interesting part. Her lawyer put out a statement saying she was just following orders from her superior. She's flipping on him. Emily realized, looks that way. The divorce proceedings began 2 weeks after the filing. The courtroom was packed, despite the judge's attempts to limit media attention. Emily sat with Catherine and her legal team on one side. Marcus sat with 3 expensive lawyers on the other. Victoria wasn't present. Her case had been separated into criminal proceedings. It was the first time Emily had seen Marcus since the incident. He looked older, harder, defeated in a way she'd never seen before. When their eyes met, she saw fear mixed with anger and maybe the smallest trace of regret. Judge Morrison, a stern man in his 60s who built his reputation on complex financial cases, called the court to order. "This is divorce proceedings, not a media circus," he said sharply. "I will not tolerate disruptions. Mrs. Carter, you're filing for divorce on grounds of adultery, fraud, and conspiracy to commit assault. Mr. Carter, how do you respond?" Marcus's lead attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client denies all allegations of conspiracy. The incident involving Mrs. Carter was a tragic accident involving a third party. As for the financial matters, we maintain that all transactions were legitimate business operations that Mrs. Carter, who hasn't worked in the corporate sector for a decade, simply doesn't understand." Emily felt her jaw tighten at the dismissive tone. She'd been expecting it, but hearing it still stung. Catherine stood smoothly. "Your Honor, we have extensive evidence to the contrary. May I present documents showing systematic financial fraud, conspiracy to commit assault, and a pattern of manipulation spanning the entire marriage?" "You may." What followed was 3 hours of methodical testimony and document review. Catherine laid out the evidence piece by piece. The emails between Marcus and Victoria planning to handle Emily. The witness statements from the street describing a deliberate push. The financial transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. The corporate documents showing Emily's 25% ownership stake that Marcus had tried to hide. Marcus's lawyers tried to counter. They argued the messages were ambiguous, that handling meant managing a difficult divorce, not assault. They claimed the financial transfers were for international business development. They even tried to argue that Emily's ownership shares had been invalidated by years of non-participation. But the evidence was too strong. Judge Morrison listened with a carefully neutral expression. When the testimony concluded, he spoke. "This court will review all submitted evidence thoroughly. I'm particularly concerned about the allegations of conspiracy and systematic asset concealment. Mr. Carter, I'm ordering you to submit complete financial records, including all international accounts, within 1 week. Mrs. Carter, your ownership stake appears legitimate, so I'm maintaining the freeze on all major company transactions until this matter is resolved. We'll reconvene in 10 days. The gavel came down. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed. Catherine made a brief statement. "My client, Emily Carter, is seeking justice for years of manipulation and a calculated attack on her life. The evidence speaks for itself. Emily said nothing. She didn't need to. Her presence was enough standing tall despite her healing injuries. Dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that reminded everyone she was far from the broken victim Marcus had expected, Marcus tried to leave through a side entrance, but reporters caught him anyway. Questions bombarded him from all sides. How do you respond to the allegations? Is your company going bankrupt? Should you step down as CEO? He pushed through without answering, but the damage was done. The image of a man fleeing questions while his wife stood tall would be. On every news site by evening. The financial disclosure arrived exactly 1 week later, delivered by courier to Catherine's office. Emily was there when they opened it, along with Catherine, Jasmine, and 2 forensic accountants Catherine had brought in. This is going to be good. One of the accountants said, breaking the seal, he wasn't wrong. Marcus's financial records, once spread across the conference table, told a story of greed, deception, and spectacular arrogance. The offshore accounts contained not 27 million, but closer to 63 million. There were accounts in locations Emily hadn't even known about: Dubai, Singapore, Luxembourg. But that wasn't the most damaging revelation. Look at this, Catherine said, holding up a document. He's been embezzling from his own company, taking money from investor funds and moving it to personal accounts. This isn't just hiding assets. This is criminal theft. How much total? Emily asked. The accountant pulled up a calculator. Over the past 4 years, approximately 92 million that should have gone to company growth and investor returns. His investors are going to destroy him. Jasmine observed. As if on cue, Catherine's phone rang. She answered, listened, then put it on speaker. Catherine, this is David Richardson from Summit Capital Partners. I'm calling as the lead investor in Carter Properties. We've just received the financial disclosure. I need to speak with your client immediately. I'm here, Mr. Richardson, Emily said. Mrs. Carter, I'll be direct. Marcus Carter has been defrauding our investment group for years. We're filing a lawsuit against him personally and calling for an emergency shareholder meeting to remove him as CEO. Given your ownership stake, we need your support. Emily glanced at Catherine, who nodded encouragingly. You have my full support. When's the meeting? 3 days from now. And Mrs. Carter, several of us believe you should consider taking an active role in the company's leadership. We need someone who understands corporate finance and won't steal from us. After they hung up, Emily sat quietly, processing everything. This was moving faster than she'd expected. The shareholder meeting 3 days later was held in a downtown conference room. Emily walked in wearing a navy suit, her arm finally free of its cast. The room was full of wealthy investors, all looking grim. Marcus sat alone at one end of the long table, no lawyers this time. He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, defeated. David Richardson called the meeting to order. We're here to address the financial irregularities discovered in Carter Properties accounts. Mr. Carter, you have 5 minutes to explain. Marcus stood slowly. The transactions were legitimate business expenses. International real estate requires moving capital across borders. My soon-to-be ex-wife has twisted normal business operations into something criminal because she's angry about our divorce.
Then explain the 63 million in personal accounts, another investor demanded. Those are reserves for future investments, reserves that were never reported to the board, Richardson interrupted. Carter, we've had forensic accountants review everything. You've been systematically stealing. We're voting to remove you as CEO effective immediately. Mrs. Carter, as the second largest shareholder, how do you vote? All eyes turned to Emily. Marcus stared at her with an expression somewhere between pleading and hatred. She thought about the woman she'd been 12 years ago, brilliant, confident, unstoppable. She thought about how Marcus had slowly convinced her to give up that woman. She thought about lying on that rain-soaked street, bleeding, while he whispered about maintaining their story. "I vote to remove Marcus Carter from all positions in this company," she said clearly. "And I support the lawsuit for recovery of funds." "Motion carries unanimously," Richardson said. "Carter, you're fired." 6 months after the shareholder meeting, Emily stood in the newly renovated headquarters of what was now called Carter Fletcher Properties, looking out at the Atlanta skyline from her office on the 30th floor. The company had been transformed under her leadership. The stock price had recovered and climbed. New clients had signed on, attracted by the company's renewed reputation for integrity. Employees felt valued again instead of manipulated. Marcus was serving 12 years in federal prison for fraud and conspiracy to commit assault. Victoria had received 4 years after her testimony secured his conviction. Both would have plenty of time to think about what they tried to do. But Emily wasn't thinking about them anymore. They'd become footnotes in her story, villains who'd inadvertently given her the greatest gift, the chance to remember who she really was. "Knock knock," Jasmine said from the doorway. She'd become the company's CFO, bringing her Goldman Sachs expertise to help rebuild everything Marcus had corrupted. "Ready for the foundation gala tonight?" Emily had launched the Carter Fletcher Foundation for Women's Empowerment 3 months ago. It provided business loans, mentorship, and support for women rebuilding their careers after divorce or trauma. Tonight's gala would raise funds to expand the program to 5 more cities. "Almost ready," Emily said. "Just needed a moment." "Big night. You're being honored by the mayor for your work." Emily smiled. "Strange how things work out. A year ago, I was lying in a hospital bed thinking my life was over. And now you're one of the most powerful businesswomen in the Southeast, running a foundation that's helped over 200 women rebuild their lives." Jasmine's expression turned serious. "You know what the best part is? You're not bitter. You took something terrible and built something beautiful." That night, standing at the podium during the gala, Emily looked out at hundreds of faces, women who'd survived their own betrayals, their own struggles, their own moments of thinking they were finished. "A year ago, someone tried to erase me from my own life," she said. "They thought I was weak because I'd let myself become small. They thought I'd forgotten who I was before I met them. They were wrong. I hadn't forgotten, I'd just been sleeping. And when I woke up, I remembered something important: your lowest moment doesn't define you. What defines you is what you build from that moment." The applause was overwhelming, but Emily kept speaking. "I'm not going to tell you revenge is sweet or that destroying the people who hurt you will make you happy. The truth is more complicated than that. Justice matters. Consequences matter. But what matters most is refusing to stay broken. What matters is remembering your strength and using it to lift others up. What matters is building something so meaningful that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant." After the gala ended, Emily stood alone on the balcony of the venue, looking out at the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman named Jessica. "I was at your speech tonight. I've been in an abusive marriage for 6 years. Tomorrow, I'm calling a lawyer. Thank you for showing me it's possible to survive and thrive." Emily typed back, "You're going to be more than okay. You're going to be extraordinary. And if you need help, the foundation is here." She put her phone away and smiled. Marcus had tried to erase her, but instead, had reminded her of who she'd always been: a survivor, a fighter, and someone who refused to stay down. And that, Emily realized, was the greatest revenge of all, not his destruction, but her resurrection. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you, but by how you rise after they try to break you. True strength isn't about revenge, it's about refusing to let anyone's cruelty define your future. When someone tries to erase you, the most powerful response is to rebuild yourself so completely that they become irrelevant to your success.